Episode 1 of Untamed starts with two rock climbers working their way up a sharp ravine. Suddenly, a woman comes crashing towards them and her body gets caught in a line and they nearly fall. Thankfully, their quick thinking and expertise saved them. Elsewhere, we're introduced to Kyle, who's with his son as he checks out a likely bear poaching case. His son asks if they can go swimming, but Kyle gets a call. He apologises to his son and leaves to check out the crime scene. Now at the scene, the rangers are able to save the two rock climbers. One of them, Milch, is unhappy to see Kyle turn up. He tells Naya that Kyle was from the investigative service branch and is technically their boss. Now Milch takes offence when Kyle starts questioning the witness instead of asking the rangers first. After the witnesses report that they saw and heard nothing, Kyle decides to drop down the ravine and check out the body. He notices some odd wounds on the victim, including a bracelet that falls off after he touches it. Afterwards, he takes pictures of the body. But unfortunately, since there's a storm coming, Kyle wants to bring up the body immediately. With time running out, the team recovers the body and assesses the wounds. It looks like Jane Doe was attacked by coyotes. It's also possible that she may have been running from something, which is backed up by Kyle when he checks the ground and notices bloody hand and footprints. Later, the medical examiner examines the body and explains it'll be hard to determine the manner of death. Now Jane Doe's body certainly went through a lot, and he also notices the golden X tattoo on her arm. Although it looks like Jane Doe was running barefoot from coyotes, Kyle thinks there's more to this story than just that. At the office, Suter asks Kyle to try to play nice with the other rangers. He warns Kyle to go easy on the Bourbon too, and as they talk, Lawrence joins them. Now Lawrence is angry that the news of Jane Doe's death has actually reached the media. He's also worried that an animal attack would scare people away and lead to bankruptcy. Kyle doesn't care since he's not under Lawrence's department though. Lawrence also wants Kyle to get back to Sandeman's lawyer. Now Sandeman went missing 5 years back and his lawyer has been trying to reach out to Kyle with no response. Later that night, Kyle takes his horse to search for Jane Doe's bracelet. He then calls his ex-wife Jill to remind her about the meteor shower on Thursday. Jill isn't exactly happy to get the call at 2 AM and worries since Kyle is drunk. The following morning, Naya drops by Kyle's house. She explains that Suter sent her to help Kyle with the Jane Doe case. Kyle doesn't buy her explanation though, but does let her into the house all the same. Now Naya notices that most of Kyle's belongings are in a box and she wonders whether he's moving in or out. She also spots a picture of Kyle's son and reveals that she has a 4-year-old son too. Back to the case, she tells him that Jane Doe's prints didn't get a hit on their system. This means they have yet to identify her. Kyle believes Jane Doe seems familiar and asks Naya to check the employees' records at the park. Since they're partnered up, Kyle insists they take the horses, much to Naya's chagrin. They ride the horses, trying to pick up Jane Doe's trail, and luckily Kyle knows the park like the back of his hand. Their search leads them to an old hunting shack where they find more bloody hand and footprints. They also find some strange carvings on the wooden walls, and as they search, a bear nearly attacks Naya, but Kyle scares it away. There's definitely a joke in here somewhere about a bear and a man, but we'll leave that to your imagination. Later, they come across a bloody shoe and collect it as evidence. Deeper in the woods, they find more blood and a bullet stuck in the woods. This leads them to believe that Jane Doe was shot, and a quick call to the medical examiner confirms that Jane Doe was shot in her left foot. Kyle and Naya realise that Jane Doe was not only running away from the coyotes, but for now, he asks Naya to keep their findings to themselves. After returning home, Kyle finds Jill waiting for him. She expresses her concerns about his late night drunken calls. Kyle denies he's in trouble though, and asks if Jill's new husband is a good father. The conversation eventually turns to Jane Doe's case though, and Jill offers to help with his theories. Later, Jill calls Suter and shares her concerns about Kyle. Suter invites her to a party at his house later that weekend, and he also mentions that her granddaughter is currently living with them since her mum got into trouble. Now back at Kyle's house, he watches his son draw and realises Jill helped him rearrange the words on Jane Doe's bracelet. This gives him a lead, and it turns out that a bracelet is a park freebie. The following day, Kyle updates her on the bracelet lead and asks her to follow up. Now based on the wall carvings, Kyle believes they need to look at natives as well. He takes a ride to meet with the native chief to ask about Jane Doe, but sadly the chief knows nothing. In the evening, Naya is still searching the database looking for a lead. Her ex sends her a message reminding her that he can't keep him away from his child forever. This message throws Naya into a panic, and at Kyle's house his son asks to watch the meteor shower, and at Jill's house she also watches a meteor shower and cries. In a shocking twist here, we see Suter telling his granddaughter about Kyle's son Caleb. Now Kyle's son died years back, and as we see, the scene cuts to Kyle talking to Caleb as they watch the meteor shower together. However, when the chief drops by, we see that Kyle is actually by himself. Kyle asks the chief to read the sky, and the chief says that it's a sign that death is back and that bodies will fall like the stars in the sky, which is where episode 1 of Untamed comes to an end. Episode 2 of Untamed starts with a flashback to the day Jane Doe got shot. Now her bag ripped, causing some medicine bottles to drop. She picked them up but ended up missing one. She then hid a bag in an abandoned ice cooler and started walking. Out of nowhere, a stray bullet hits her. Back in the prison, a reporter announces that the investigation into Jane Doe is still ongoing. The reporter also brings up another investigation, as people are still looking for answers in the case of Sean Sanderson, a businessman who went missing. In the park, Carl comes across more clues and finds the medicine bottle Jane Doe accidentally left behind. He notes here that the cap has a golden X sign, similar to the tattoo on Jane Doe's body. And at the office, Suter talks to Naya, curious about how she and her son are adjusting to their new surroundings. He also wants to see about Kyle and how their partnership is working out. Naya mentions the bracelet and Suter takes her to the storage room, where there is an entire box of similar bracelets. The discovery disappoints Naya, as it implies anyone could have given Jane Doe this bracelet. Turner calls her for an update and insists she keep following the lead. Kyle drives to town here to talk to Teddy, a drug user who might have a lead on the medicine bottle and tattoo. Sadly, Teddy has no idea but promises to ask around. Kyle takes Teddy's stash and promises to return if he gets him a lead. Later, he drops by a local hotel to study the carvings, which look similar to the drawings on the wall that he found. It seems he has a complicated relationship with Lana at the front desk. At the hotel, he runs into Suter, who invites him for lunch. Now Suter brings up the case and asks Kyle to consider taking a different job. It seems Jill talked to Suter about her concerns for Kyle. The midnight calls have been worrying her, and Suter is also worried about him too, but the latter insists that he's just fine. After lunch, Kyle calls Jill and asks her not to worry anymore, and he also promises to stop the midnight calls. Kyle drives back to his cabin only to find a lawyer waiting for him. The lawyer, Esther, is representing Sanderson's family, who are suing the park for wrongful death. Now Sanderson went missing 5 years ago, and Esther has questions about Kyle's involvement in this case. In particular, she's concerned about his state of mind at the time of the investigation. It turns out Sean disappeared a few months after Caleb's death. Kyle tries to answer Esther's questions professionally, but the questions trigger his memories of loss and how he found Caleb's body floating in a river. Naya drops by to inform them that the toxicology on Jane Doe has come back clean, so Kyle invites her to join him and takes her to the squatters' group. Unfortunately, the squatters refuse to cooperate, even though one of them looks like she knows something. Kyle also asks about Abuelo, who, as we soon find out, is more of a drug peddler than a shaman he claims to be. Sadly, Abuelo is on one of his spiritual walks to find his center. However, one of the squatters mentions that a ranger named De Niro dropped by the previous day looking for Abuelo too. After striking out at the squatters' camp, Kyle and Naya separate to follow different leads. Naya loses a horse and is late picking up her son, and the babysitter mentions that Gael's dad called, causing Naya to leave her ex a message, warning him to stay away. In the meantime, Kyle tracks down Shane, who happens to be a wildlife biologist. Now Shane has been looking for Abuelo too, as he believes there's a link between Abuelo and the sick deer. As Kyle asks more questions about Jane Doe, Shane clams up, saying he knows nothing. Now Kyle cleverly manages to fire Shane's gun and collect the bullet. He's hoping to run ballistics and compare this bullet to the one linked to Jane Doe's case. So Kyle drops by the lab and begs Marlon to run the test and share the results only with him. Back in town, Teddy visits a tattoo shop to ask about the gold tattoo. The artist, Linton, insists there's no such thing as a gold tattoo and kicks him out. However, another guy happens to be listening to their conversation. Once Teddy leaves, Linton texts him. He asks Teddy to drop the issue, as nothing good is going to come from this line of questioning. Sadly, later that night, Teddy's attacked and strangled in his car. The following day, the Rangers attend Suter and Mary's 40th wedding anniversary. Milch tells Naya all about Caleb's death and how grief has changed Kyle. It turns out a pervert took Caleb when he strayed from his group during a group hike. Unfortunately, they never found the guy, but grief led Kyle to hit the bottle hard. And if it were not for Suter, he would have lost his badge. Simultaneously, Kyle is jealous of Jill's new husband, and it's also hard for him to see Gael, as the boy reminds him of Caleb. As a result, he checks out of the party early. Elsewhere in the park, a group of young people go swimming. One of them then comes across Teddy's body. Meanwhile, Kyle continues to follow Jane Doe's trail and comes across her footprint in the forest. He gets a call informing him of Teddy's death, so Kyle drives to the crime scene, and whilst there, Naya calls to inform him she has found Jane Doe. Thanks to her investigation, she's discovered that Jane Doe was a young child who went missing years ago, which is where episode 2 comes to an end. Episode 3 of Untamed starts with a flashback of a young Lucy painting rocks with her sick mother. Her mum tries to explain the concept of death to her, but Lucy opts to hang back and finish painting the rocks when her mum heads back to the house. A few minutes later, someone familiar approaches Lucy. Back in the present, we learn that Lucy was reported missing back in 2010 when she was only 7. It was Carl's case back then, and he was sure Rory, Lucy's dad, was the one who killed her. Unfortunately, Carl couldn't prove it at the time, and Rory moved to Fresno a few years later and was attacked and beaten to death. The only lead they have now is James Cook, Lucy's stepbrother. Meanwhile, Carl asks for Teddy's phone data. On his way out of the office, he finds Jill in his car. She offers him a list of park employees that she remembers. He tells her that they ID'd Jane Doe, and the conversation turns to how Jill is still broken and unhappy. She's grieving her son and remembers little mundane things she used to do with Caleb. Carl brings up Sean's lawyer visit here, and Jill asks if there had been a new lead. Unfortunately, there hasn't. The lab report on the pills found on Lucy come back positive for a mixture of several different drugs. Carl asks Lucy to reach out to the Mariposa PD to see if they know more. On the ride to James's place, Nia tries to bring up Caleb, but Carl turns the radio up. At James's place, Carl asks Nia to wait for him outside. He goes in, but James spots him and makes a run for it. Thankfully, Nia saves Kyle before James lunges at him with a metal rod. James mistakes them for loan sharks, and with this cleared up, they take him back to the apartment, where it soon becomes clear that James knows nothing about Lucy. He didn't even know she was alive. With no leads to follow, Nia and Kyle try to remain helpful. On their ride back, Kyle brings up Nia's reason for leaving LA, and as we suspected, it did have something to do with her ex. Kyle also opens up to Nia about his childhood at a ranch, and this conversation certainly helps them to grow closer together. Upon getting to the office, they find Lawrence giving a press conference about Teddy. Kyle's mood changes and he ignores Nia's request to return to the squatters' village. After the press conference, Lawrence lashes out at Kyle for always keeping information to himself. Lawrence wants Kyle transferred and has started working on it. Suter agrees that Lawrence has been patient with Kyle. Kyle pulls Suter aside and reveals that he thinks the cases are linked. He also believes that Lucy was murdered. Suter questions if they have a serial killer on their hands, but Kyle tells him it's probably not likely. He wonders if he failed Lucy 15 years ago, and on his ride back home, Kyle hallucinates Caleb once again. The following day, Kyle takes Chief and drops by Lucy's old house. The owner denies seeing Lucy around, but later tells Chief he saw a young lady at the ridge near his home. He also gives Chief Maggie's old belongings that the family left behind. Chief questions why Kyle is dedicated to the case, and Kyle remains elusive and asks about the carvings. The Chief claims that the carvings are meant to keep evil spirits away. Elsewhere, Esther gets on Jill's nerves when she drops by to ask about Sean's case. Jill keeps her cool though, but hearing about her son's death certainly triggers her. In the meantime, Nia takes Kyle's horse and heads to the forest. Shane spots her on his daily runs, and Nia heads deeper into the woods following Lucy's trail. She comes across a cave here, where she also stumbles across an oxygen mask and decides to investigate further. Unfortunately, she falls through an empty well. Back in town, Kyle gets Teddy's phone data and confronts Linson. The visit proves to be a dead end as Linson likes to mind his business. Upon getting home, Kyle notices that his horse is missing. Back in the cave, Nia tries to find her way out and gets stuck. Kyle finds her before she drowns though and convinces her to calm down and pull herself out. Thanks to Kyle, Nia makes it back home to her son. And while this is going on, Jill locks herself in the bathroom and contemplates calling Kyle. In another flashback, we see a young Lucy locking herself in her room to keep her stepdad out. Someone comes through the window though, and she sweetly greets him, which is where episode 3 comes to an end. Episode 4 of Untamed starts with a flashback of Lucy revisiting her old home. She's wearing her mum's yellow dress and is startled when a man asks if she needs help. She runs off and changes her outfit, and as she's about to leave though, her friend asks her to stop assisting the wrong people. Lucy simply shrugs it off and goes into the caves. Back in the present, Nia and Kyle continue investigating these caves. They head back to see what they can find, and this time they find Abuelo's lower jaw. A deeper investigation leads them to Abuelo's body. Now, based on this dead body, it looks like he was killed roughly a week ago. Kyle naturally goes back to the squatter village and informs Gloria of Abuelo's death. The news does not sadden Gloria since he was her ex. Kyle brings in more rangers to search the squatters' belongings and bring them in for questioning. Summer sees the rangers and hides behind a tree. Meanwhile, Kyle tells Suter that the cases are all connected after all. They find drugs among the squatters' belongings, and Gloria, hardened by the world, refuses to talk. The rangers start running background checks on the other squatters, and Lucy's DNA results come back and prove Rory was not her biological father. Kyle wonders if Lucy's mum had an affair, and he insists on investigating this, but Suter says it won't help much. A kid then drops by the office and asks to talk to Kyle. The young man believes he knew Lucy when she was a teenager. He thinks Lucy is Grace McRae, and according to him, Lucy/Grace lived with a pastor's family back in Nevada. He last saw her 10 years ago, and the Gibbs family reported that she had reunited with her family. The young man gives Kyle a picture of Lucy at the church, and afterwards he asks about the reward money. In the meantime, Nia finds Summer and asks her about Lucy. Summer mentions Lucy has a boyfriend whom she referred to as Turkis. Lucy kept a lot of secrets, but the relationship certainly changed her. She started selling drugs for a secret boyfriend, and sometimes Lucy returned home all beaten up. She and Pacuna were close to Abuelo, and Summer also adds that she saw Lucy on the day she died, right before she went on her usual swap at a nearby gulch. Nia briefs Kyle on her latest findings after talking to Summer. They agree to take a helicopter the next day and search the east side. Nia also goes through Lucy's bag here, and later Kyle does the same and notices a picture of Lucy with a man's hand on her shoulder. Unfortunately, the man's face is cropped out. At night, Kyle drops by Shane's favourite bar and asks about Abuelo and the drug ring. Kyle assumes Shane was in the drug business, and Shane admits that once in a while he did get paid to look the other way. Other than that, he has no idea who's actually running the show. Shane brings up Lucy's case and mocks Kyle for failing to save Lucy. He also brings up Esther, Sean's lawyer, and implies Kyle might be involved in Sean's disappearance. Suter arrives in time to take Kyle away, and he warns Kyle that if he does not stop drinking, he's actually going to lose his badge, properly this time. Suter worries that Kyle is torturing himself with his cases and Caleb's death. At Nia's house, she gets a sudden visit from her ex. He demands to spend the night and reunite with Nia and Gael. He insists that Nia must return to LA with him and cover for him about a case. He's currently on leave pending an investigation into missing money. He wants Nia to lie and clear his name. Nia obviously refuses, but agrees to let him spend the night all the same. She sneaks out with Gael and drives to Kyle's house though, where she comes clean about her situation and the restraining order she actually has against him. Kyle agrees to let them stay over for the night, and he allows Gael to play with everything except Caleb's toys. The following morning, Jill offers to babysit Gael while Kyle and Nia work. Kyle asks Milch to turn Pacuna loose and send him back to the empty squatter village. They secretly follow Pacuna to the caves though and the drug ring leader. It turns out the gang executed Abuelo for betraying them, and the episode ends with Nia and Kyle bringing Pacuna in for questioning. Episode 5 of Untamed starts with the Rangers launching an operation to catch the drug dealers in the cave. Kyle nearly loses his life when a bomb goes off, and although the operation is successful, the team loses a few officers. Thankfully, they do manage to get the ringleader and bring him in for questioning too. They also find more dead bodies of women and Lucy's bag. Instead of going to the hospital, Kyle has Jill tend to his wounds. Kyle is disturbed by the fact that none of the drug dealers are admitting to Lucy's death. He wants to investigate this further, and Jill offers to babysit Gael. Kyle and Nia return to the office and grill the suspects again. None of them admit to killing Lucy, and some of them have apparently never even met her. Kyle tells Suter and Nia that he's uncertain about Lucy's death, and later Kyle asks another officer to run ballistics on the guns found in the cave. Nia and Kyle then retrace Lucy's trail to solve the mystery. The investigation takes them to the east side of the wood near Suter's house. Whilst there, Kyle sees the chief. The chief is offended that Kyle forgot he had mentioned he had moved. Kyle turns the conversation back to Lucy, and Chief's surprised since he thought that case was closed. At home, Nia's ex attacks Jill in an attempt to take Gael. Jill fights back, and Kyle and Nia arrive in time to save them. Nia's ex is then arrested, and Nia thanks Jill for saving her son. However, Jill later confesses to Kyle that she felt jealous when Nia took Gael from her arms. She also wonders if Caleb's loss brought about the worst in her. Kyle says nothing, but as she leaves, he assures her that she is a good mum. Shortly after, Scott calls Kyle and informs him Jill tried to take her life. Kyle rushes to the hospital and Jill apologizes. Scott asks Kyle to help Jill move past the pain, but Kyle storms out the hospital and attacks Shane at a bar. He pulls a gun on Shane and tells the latter that he should have rejected Jill's request. The following morning, Suter helps Kyle nurse his hangover before reporting to work. At the office, Lawrence happily informs Kyle that he's actually suspended. He asks Kyle to transfer all his cases to Agent Dixon, and according to Lawrence, Kyle's time at the park is done. Kyle returns home and talks to the chief. The man tells Kyle that he will always carry Caleb with him wherever he is. Agent Dixon then arrives shortly after to pick up all the case files. Kyle gives him everything except Lucy's bag. As it turns out, Kyle has actually found Lucy's phone hidden in this bag. He charges it and visits the morgue, and at the morgue, he uses face recognition to unlock Lucy's phone. He finds a few videos Lucy took before her death here, and one of them has Shane in it. Kyle leaves Lucy Lucy's phone inside his truck and calls Nia to come and get it. He also tells her that if he is not back by the next 24 hours, it must be because something has happened with Shane. Afterwards, he calls his wife and apologizes to her. He mentions he's going after Shane, and he assumes Shane would talk about Sean. Jill says it might be a good idea and asks him to be careful. In the woods, Carl finds Shane's tent and discovers a bag with drugs. Before he can call it in, Shane shoots him in the abdomen. Caleb's ghost appears and warns Carl that Shane is coming, which brings episode 5 to an end. Episode 6 of Untamed starts with Shane hunting an injured Kyle throughout the woods. Kyle tries to treat his wounds as he keeps going. Back at his house, Nia drops by to check on him, and she keeps calling him but gets the voicemail every time. The little hunting game goes on for hours and Kyle keeps moving until it's nightfall. Unfortunately, he's lost a lot of blood. Shane eventually corners him and is about to kill him, but luckily Nia shows up just in time to save Carl and kill Shane. Carl is then rushed to the hospital where he's treated and makes a quick recovery. He thanks Nia for saving his life and she thanks him for teaching her about the woods. By the looks of it, Nia is planning to hang around permanently. After getting back home, Jill comes clean to Scott about what happened to Sean. As we suspected, Sean was the pervert who killed Caleb. Thanks to Shane's motion cameras in the park, Carl and Jill found out what Sean did. Carl wanted to collect more evidence and bring Sean in. Unfortunately, Jill didn't want to endure the long legal procedure for justice, so she went behind Carl's back and paid Shane to blackmail, lure and kill Sean. After confessing this to Scott, Jill visits Carl at the hospital and promises that she will be okay. She begs him to promise the same, but he can't. He still sees and talks to Caleb and doesn't want to let go. After he's discharged from hospital though, Carl agrees to sign whatever papers Esther needs to prove her wrongful death liability case. Even after Shane's death though, Carl continues to blame himself for her death. He tries to seek answers to what life she led before her death, and he allows the chief to give Lucy a native burial. With no job at the park anymore, Carl leaves for Nevada to follow a lead. Suter tries to discourage him from pursuing the case, but Carl insists. In Nevada, he finds out that Lucy lived with the Gibbs family. The family took advantage of many kids here by hiding behind a religious mask. Carl also learns that Lucy/Grace went through a lot in that foster home. She always believed her cop father would come to save her, and when he didn't, Lucy ran away and returned to the woods. Upon hearing this, Carl puts the pieces together and calls Suter. They meet by the lake and Suter comes clean about his sins. Lucy was his daughter, but he kidnapped and left her with the Gibbs family. He thought Lucy would be safer there than with her stepfather, Roger. After Lucy returned, she started blackmailing Suter. Ultimately, he killed her to protect his family and marriage, but Carl refuses to help Suter cover up any more crimes. To escape his punishment, Suter winds up killing himself. As the episode comes to an end, Carl finally says goodbye to Caleb and chooses to leave. He leaves his horse and Caleb's toys to Nia, and the chief is proud to see Carl finally try to move on, which is where this season comes to an end. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.